Have you ever seen a 20-year-old athlete make an entire music empire issue a public apology? Not through threats, not through a sex tape scandal, but simply with a polite refusal. The truth is, Alexandra Eala never wanted to destroy anyone. She just wanted to be herself, a tennis player from a country that few in American showbiz care about. But that is exactly what made her collision with Nicki Minaj the biggest cultural shock of 2026. A moment where both Hollywood and the sporting world had to stop and watch. On one side was the most powerful female rapper of the last decade, struggling between political criticism and audience indifference. On the other was a young Filipino player, fresh off defeating an Olympic silver medalist in Auckland, viewed by all of Southeast Asia as a new national icon. These two worlds should have never collided, but they were pulled together in a PR plan described as perfect, at least on paper. But what no one expected was this. When invited to be the face of a promotional campaign alongside Nicki, where every pose and statement was pre-scripted, Alexandra flatly refused. "I am an athlete. I want to be represented as someone strong, not a decorative object." That sentence, in a brief meeting, silenced the entire room. And Nicki's subsequent reaction, according to many sources, was not only unprofessional, but also touched upon Eala's national pride. Just hours later, Twitter exploded. And just one day later, Nicki Minaj, who had never publicly apologized to anyone in her 15-year career, wrote 7 words. "I forgot what it felt like to climb." The tweet was deleted within 10 minutes. But the screenshots remained. And her career was never the same again. What really happened in that room? Why did Alexandra turn down millions of dollars just to uphold her personal principles? And did Nicki Minaj really shed tears after being rejected? Stay tuned, because the next part is even more shocking. And if you love the untold truths of the sporting world, don't forget to subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming developments. From a young girl with a racket in Manila to the woman who dared to refuse Nicki Minaj. A few years ago, if you asked an American, is there any notable female tennis player from the Philippines? The answer was almost always silence. It wasn't because that nation lacked talent. It was because the tennis world, much like showbiz, traditionally doesn't care about those who don't belong to the center. Alexandra Eala grew up amidst the dusty heat of Manila. While her peers were playing on their phones or scrolling TikTok, the little girl held a racket and hit balls against a concrete wall. Day after day. No international coaches. No multi-million-dollar sponsorships. Just a persistence that bordered on stubbornness and an immortal belief. "I can do this." Her mother, a former competitive swimmer, often said, "If you want to represent an entire nation, you must know when to be silent and when to stand tall." That saying followed Alexandra through every tournament, every budget flight to compete internationally, and every moment when the entire stadium cheered for her opponent, while she stood there, the only stranger, gritting her teeth, waiting for her serve. But by 2026, no one dared underestimate that name anymore. Defeating Olympic silver medalist Donna Vekic in Auckland wasn't because the opponent's form had dropped, but because Alexandra played as if the match were destiny. Losing the first set and trailing in points, the girl from Southeast Asia still turned the tide with 2 consecutive set wins. No one understood how. Some said it was the opponent's overconfidence. Some said it was luck. But those who actually watched the match knew it was grit. And what was more remarkable than anything was the way Alexandra walked off the court. No screaming. No throwing her racket. She just gave a slight smile and bowed to thank the audience. When answering the interview, she switched to Tagalog to thank her homeland. Maraming salamat. This win is for all of you. Not long after, Hollywood came calling. And, as if fate were playing a trick, the first invitation came from one of the most controversial figures in American showbiz, Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj's rebirth campaign, and the pawn named Alexandra. Nicki Minaj was once untouchable. For nearly 2 decades, she not only dominated the music charts, but also became a cultural icon. A woman of color who dared to speak, to act, and to never apologize. But by 2026, the impossible had begun to happen. Nicki was no longer at the center of the game. New fashion labels were gradually choosing Gen Z representatives. Young rappers were seizing social media with fast language and shocking imagery. And Nicki, the woman who once led every visual revolution, now struggled to keep herself from being seen as the past. Political feuds, midnight Instagram posts quickly deleted, and a series of rumors about her losing financial control all sent Nicki's team into a panic. They needed a plan, not just a new album. They needed a new symbol to attach to the image of a mature version of Nicki, powerful, deep, and inspiring. Alexandra Eala looked like the perfect puzzle piece. A young multi-ethnic female athlete, famous for her discipline and humility. The perfect mirror to reflect against Nicki's current complexity and notoriety. Internally, this campaign was called the Reclaim Move, a plan to salvage Nicki's image by associating it with clean, righteous values. And Alexandra was the brightest pawn on that chessboard. The initial invitation sounded like a dream, appearing at a private album launch in Los Angeles, collaborating with a high-end sportswear brand, images of two powerful women, one from a stage, one from the court, standing together as symbols of female excellence. To any 20-year-old, this opportunity was a golden ticket. For Alexandra, who once dreamed of sponsorship just to compete internationally, this could be the turning point. But it was from here that everything began to veer off course. Because Nicki's side didn't just want a partner. They wanted a mannequin. A soft, easily controlled version to make Nicki stand out more when standing next to her. And they didn't know that the person they chose this time did not come from the world of submission. When a contract becomes shackles. Initially, everything was full of promise. Alexandra, though reserved, agreed to meet. She was promised the freedom to choose her own outfits for the campaign, to speak in her mother tongue during the launch, to have full control over her personal image. But then the first draft of the contract arrived, and what seemed like a collaboration turned out to be control. Nicki's side demanded that Eala only wear clothes selected by their stylist, following the main color theme of the album. All related social media posts had to be pre-approved. She was asked to speak in pure English because American audiences don't need subtitles. And worst of all, the series of images in the campaign would be shaped by Nicki's crew, from the concept and layout down to her facial expressions. When Eala's team responded and proposed changes, every compromise was rejected. A member of Eala's crew, speaking anonymously, shared. It felt like they didn't need Alexandra. They just needed a model with a cute background to serve as a backdrop. That was when Alexandra asked a serious question. Is this an opportunity or a fame trap? She was used to not being respected, from small tournaments to locker rooms where she was the only person of color. But never had disrespect been packaged under the guise of $1 million opportunity. And as the day of the face-to-face meeting approached, Alexandra decided, if she couldn't be herself, she would refuse. But she still went, out of hope that perhaps a meeting would change something. That maybe Nicki would understand. She didn't know that her very presence would be the strongest punch against the carefully staged PR machine. The truth in that room, and the laughter that changed everything. The meeting was held at a low-profile studio in West Hollywood, a place that once hosted cover shoots for Rolling Stone. Alexandra arrived early. A white polo shirt, simple trousers, sneakers, a style exactly like her. Professional, no frills. She carried with her the belief that if two women truly met, without intermediaries, all misunderstandings would be resolved. But then Nicki walked in. According to several witnesses, the moment Nicki first looked at Alexandra, it wasn't a welcome. It was a judgmental head-to-toe scan. There was no handshake, no greeting, only an atmosphere that grew cold, bit by bit. When the photographer suggested they pose a little closer, then asked Alexandra to lean, slightly arching her waist, as per the music magazine style, she politely refused. I am an athlete. I want to be shown as a strong person, not sexy decor. Nicki laughed. But it wasn't a laugh of empathy. It was a cold, short laugh, sharp as a knife. Then whispers began to rise from her team. Who does she think she is? She plays with a racket and thinks she's Beyoncé? No one intervened. No one apologized. Alexandra still stood there, silent, unyielding. Because if she took one step back, she would betray herself. And in that very moment, no one expected that Nicki Minaj, who once used her rap lyrics to take on the world, was about to crumble because of a silence. The leak, Twitter explodes, and 7 words that rocked showbiz. The shoot that day ended sooner than expected. Not a single photo was kept. Alexandra left the studio without another word. Not out of anger, but because she knew any words now were just excuses. She had seen how they wanted to use her, not as a partner, but as an accessory in someone else's collection of power. Less than 24 hours later, what happened in that room began to leak. Initially, it was anonymous posts on Reddit. Nicki Minaj bullied tennis star, A-lister laughed when athlete refused pose. Then came a series of articles from small news sites, which suddenly exploded when an entertainment reporter from Variety confirmed there is a serious conflict between Nicki Minaj and athlete Alexandra Eala. The collaboration project has been canceled. The internet went insane. Nicki's fans poured in to defend their idol. Sports fans defended Eala. But the majority of the neutral audience was surprised by the detail repeated over and over. She refused to be posed like a doll. She said she's an athlete, not a prop. Then on Tuesday morning, when everyone thought the story was just a normal scandal, Nicki Minaj posted a tweet. No photo. No filter. No hashtag. Only 7 words. I forgot what it felt like to climb. Within 7 minutes, the tweet reached 500,000 interactions. By the 10th minute, it was gone. Deleted. Without a word of explanation. But the internet does not forget. Screenshots spread like a virus. And for the first time in years, people saw a silent Nicki. No social media war. No strategy. Just a vague, vulnerable confession from the person who once thought she was at a peak no one could reach. And though no one mentioned Alexandra's name in that tweet, everyone understood. She was the one who made it happen, not with a scandal, not with drama, but with dignity. The 20-year-old girl and the slap to the fake media. There was no official speech. No media tour to recount the incident. Alexandra just continued training as if nothing had happened. But the whole world could not ignore it. CNN called her the athlete of integrity. ESPN opened a segment analyzing why Eala said no. An unexpected hashtag climbed to the top of the U.S. trends for 3 days. Hashtag she refused. In the Philippines, a series of major newspapers hailed her as a national hero. Female students at universities pasted photos of Alexandra in their lockers. A high school in Cebu renamed its annual sports Meet the Eala Cup. Even an anonymous WTA player shared. We are asked to pose sexy every week. But no one has ever dared to refuse like her. Alexandra did what many only dare to dream of. What was even more noteworthy was that she didn't strike back. She didn't exploit the incident for fame. She turned down interviews from dozens of American TV channels. When forced to speak, Alexandra said exactly one thing. I represent my country. If I compromise for the lights, then I am no longer myself. That quote was printed on thousands of t-shirts, used as TikTok captions, and spread across hundreds of sports fan pages, not just in Southeast Asia, but the black community in the U.S. also spoke up in support. An analysis from Rolling Stone called this a slap in the face to fake media, when a young person refused to be a prop for a queen trying to rebirth her image. They wrote, the media didn't expect resistance. They expected gratitude. And that's the problem. From a tennis player whose name few knew, Alexandra Eala became a global icon, not through victory, but by daring to say no at the right time. What happens when power has to bow? In the world of American entertainment, refusing a superstar is suicide. Contracts get cut. Your name is struck from invitations. You get sabotaged behind the scenes with malicious rumors. But for Alexandra, everything turned around. A week after the incident, Nike sent a collaboration proposal, with a clause stating 100% control of image belongs to the athlete. Vogue called to invite her for a cover shoot, with a creative team entirely of Asian descent. And Serena Williams, who had been through no shortage of similar situations, messaged her privately on Instagram. "You did it with dignity. That's power." Meanwhile, Nicki Minaj's side withdrew completely. The album release was delayed. The promotion crew was overhauled. Many veteran fans wrote letters of apology to Alexandra, admitting they had grown too accustomed to bullying disguised as fame. The story became a case study in PR classes at NYU, Harvard, and UCLA. The story of power, when not placed in the right spot, will collapse just because one person dares to refuse. The question is, has Nicki really changed? No, one is certain. But what is certain is, Alexandra didn't need fame that way. She returned to the practice court, continued competing, and continued raising her ranking. During a press conference in Madrid, when asked, "What do you think about becoming a global icon?" she just smiled. "I don't represent the world. I just try to represent myself, and hope that is good enough to inspire." Redefining the modern heroine image. In the history of mass media, the icon of the heroine is often associated with the image of a storm, being betrayed, rising up, and then retaliating with dramatic action. But Alexandra Eala has redrawn that model, not with blood, but with stillness. Not with fierce words, but with consistency in personal values. Amidst millions of noisy bits of information, she chose the only way of reacting that the world was not prepared to deal with, not playing by their rules. She didn't post crying stories. She didn't drop inspirational quotes. She just continued living as before. And that is what made her the most dangerous person in the media era. A woman who cannot be bought, who does not need fame, and yet becomes impossible to ignore. In the eyes of the younger generation, she is proof that you don't need to change yourself to fit in. You can be yourself. And if the world doesn't accept that, then it is the world that needs to change. Many cultural experts call Alexandra a living case study for a Gen Z generation that is losing faith in stars manufactured by algorithms. Because she follows no script. She doesn't sell drama. She made the entire industry turn back and ask, what is dignity? When a young athlete becomes the face of the rejection of artificial culture, it means the public is tired. They no longer want to follow those who are best at pretending. They want someone real. Alexandra didn't ask for permission to become an icon. She only remained steadfast in one thing, not letting anyone else rewrite her story. Do you want to follow real characters, media twists never told before? Don't forget to subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel, where athletes don't just hit balls, they redefine an entire generation. If choice has a price, then how much is dignity? Some said Alexandra was foolish, refusing an opportunity worth millions of dollars, collaborating with an international star, standing on the same stage with someone who once had 100 million followers. Who would do that? The answer is, the person who doesn't need someone else's light to shine. The incident between Nicki Minaj and Alexandra Eala was not just a conflict between two individuals. It was a collision between two ways of living. On one side is a Hollywood world accustomed to controlling the narrative, writing emotional scripts, and re-imaging by the season. The other side is a new generation, imperfect, not needing drama, only needing to live true to themselves. And if you notice, from beginning to end, Alexandra never once criticized Nicki. Not a single insult. No attempt to tear her down. She simply said no to a proposal she felt was wrong, and let the rest tell the story. During a talk show after the event, a cultural critic asked, "Does Eala regret refusing such a huge opportunity?" The hall went silent. But the one who answered was the audience, through a sign they held up. She lost nothing. She gained herself. Perhaps that is the biggest lesson from this drama. Not everyone has the chance to choose. But if you do, choose the thing that allows you to look straight into the mirror without bowing your head. Alexandra chose. And the whole world had to look up to see her in a completely different way. When a no silences an entire industry. The event between Alexandra Eala and Nicki Minaj will pass like many other scandals. But the no that Alexandra spoke, without screaming, without anger, will last longer than any social media post. Because it wasn't just the refusal of a campaign. It was the protection of identity. It was the assertion, I was not born to be a background for anyone else, no matter how famous that person is. She didn't react with a speech, but with her very presence, silent yet heavy with weight. In a world where women are often forced to collaborate, compromise, or maintain an image, Alexandra only maintained dignity. And that is what made someone like Nicki Minaj, who once rapped "They Can't Take Me Down," have to go on Twitter and confess, I forgot what it felt like to climb. That is the biggest message. Real power does not lie in the microphone, the spotlight, or the $1 million contract. It lies in the ability to say no at the right time when someone tries to redefine who you are. And if that comes from a 20-year-old girl from a country once called irrelevant, then it is no longer an isolated story. It is a change in the narrative of the entire world. What do you think of Alexandra's choice? A moral victory or a lost opportunity? Leave a comment. And if you want to continue discovering stories that have never made the newspapers, don't forget to subscribe to the Pro Tennis 360 channel, where the truth doesn't lie in the spotlight, but between those who dare to step out of it. Would you like me to research more about the specific Nike campaign Alexandra signed after this event, or perhaps provide a list of other athletes who have taken similar stands for their personal brand?